I feel better now. Thinking
No, I mean,
about
like,
that.
you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Welcome to the channel once again. We have an important video today. Friends, I need you to watch this till the end. We are going to examine a video from Charlie Kirk. Now, keep in mind, this is not so much about Charlie Kirk. This is about how we think, process, and examine videos online so that we do not get manipulated, misinformed, or pushed aside and bring about unnecessary division in the church. Now, I'm going to examine a video. There's a lot of misconception out there, right? There's a lot of videos out there, things are being said about this and about that. Today, I'm going to examine one video from Charlie Kirk. We're going to listen to it fully, and I'm going to show you from the Word of God how we can think biblically and critically. Now, let me give you the biblical reasons for my position here quickly. This is coming from the book of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 and 26. Listen, this is a powerful text, okay? Listen. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted Jesus. Crucial, tempted Jesus, saying unto him, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Now, I want you to notice the answer that Jesus gave. And he said unto them, what is written in the law? How readest thou? Now, two questions he gave to the question that this man asked. Keep in mind, he's tempting Jesus. So this man is not very honest. But nevertheless, Jesus takes the time to do something very intentional. And I'm going to show you critical thinking, how it is all displayed in just this verse alone. And we can go on and on to read what else Christ have to say. I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to break it down. Now, let's first watch the video from Charlie Kirk. This is one of the videos that we need to examine. And there's a lot of misconception and a lot of retaliation and reaction over this one comment. Again, this is one evidence. We're not examining everything that is being said. If there's another video we want to examine and look at it, I can do that. I've seen them, but I don't want to make this about Charlie Kirk so much. Remember now, the goal is to teach people how to think biblically and critically. Now, this is crucial. Listen to the entire message, and we're going to come back and examine this. And I'm going to show some evidence to make the point, and we're going to come back to the book to the book of Luke so that we can examine what Jesus meant. Now, listen carefully.
Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. You know, this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive. They think we're like, oh, of course. That's why we need affirmative action, because you have impressed us with your brilliance. Of course. Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. They think as they kind of now reveal that I'm only here because of anti-white, anti-Asian forced discrimination policies that turn me into a bitter, resentful activist that hates white people, honestly, through
before we move to the next segment, I'm going to share some videos to make a point. Now, you first thing you need to do, you need to just ask a few questions, right? Number one, what is he talking about? Number two, who is he talking about? Number three, what is his understanding of the subject matter? Number four, why is he making those remarks? And I'm going to come back to answer those questions. Now, I want to ask you the question you can answer. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Answer in a comment. Question number two, who is he talking about? Is he talking about all black women? Or is he talking about 4 black women? You let me know. You let me know. What is his understanding of affirmative action? What is his Now, did you hear what I asked? I'm not talking about our understanding. I'm not talking about the Republican or Democrat. What is Charlie Kirk understanding of affirmative action? Because remember now, you have to kind of go into his mentality to understand why he's saying what he's saying. Next, why is he making those remarks? Is it because he hates black women? Or is it because he's pushing a political view? Is it because he has a different conviction? Or is he trying to make a point against affirmative action? You got to ask those questions. So now, having asked a few questions, we're going to come back and examine this video. Now, I think you can already see a huge difference when you start asking the right questions. We don't respond emotionally here. We're simply asking the questions. Okay, so now, there are different definitions to affirmative action. So here is a general definition that I found on Britannica. Affirmative action, we are told, in the United States, an active effort to improve employment or education opportunities for members of minority groups and for women. Affirmative action began as a government remedy to the effect of long-standing discrimination against such groups and has consisted of policies, programs, and procedures to give limited preferences to minorities and women in job hiring, admission to institution of higher education, the awarding of government contracts, and other social benefits. The typical criteria for affirmative actions are race, disability, gender, ethnic origin, and age. Okay, so that is a definition out there. Keep in mind, this is not a perfect definition. It's a definition. Charlie Kirk might have a different definition. Okay, some Democrats may have a different definition. The people who are for affirmative action can have a different definition. It is not as black and white as we think. This is why the school of thought matters here. So now this is Jasmine Crockett. Listen to her words, okay? We're just gonna hear what she says. Listen carefully.
Say because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy.
All right. Question. What did she just say in that short clip? Of course, there's context. There's always context, okay? But in that short clip alone, what did you just hear? She got the job because of what? Why did she ask for the job? Because of what? Her skin color. Now, keep in mind, people like Charlie Kirk is listening to this, right? And they have a different definition of affirmative action. Things like this is formulating thoughts and ideas in their mind. They're going to use this to say certain things later on. Listen once again to what she says.
You've been gracious. Is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy.
This is very important that we understand the words, the mentality, the reasons that led to Charlie Kirk's remark. Let's keep watching. Now, we're watching another one, WNBA DEI diversity hires, and they are talking here, and listen once again to what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of our teams are really doing a great job, and there's been a focus from the league to help push diversity hiring practices, particularly when coaching and front office vacancies occur. So there is a diversity hiring task force that's taken place, that has been kind of organized, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so the work there is to try to make sure we have better representation of people of color, people of various kind of gender experiences, if you will, in these roles.
Okay. So you get the same message. Affirmative action in relationship to DEI. They're connected. They're not exactly the same thing. We understand, but they are connected. As far as hiring is concerned, position is concerned, being accepted in certain Ivy League colleges and so on, there is a relationship. Now, let's keep going. We're just examining evidence. This is Joy Reid, and we're going to listen to what she says. This is a short video, and she's going to explain herself later on. But that video was also one of the reasons why Charlie Kirk said what he said. Okay? But she went on to explain that, even though he never really fixed the record. But nevertheless, it's good to hear why he said what he said. Okay?
Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action.
Okay. Remember, Charlie Kirk is listening to stuff like this, right? I'm speaking in present tense because a lot of people think like Charlie Kirk does. And this is the reason why they say the things they say. Okay, so let's keep going. Joy Reid came back on a Don Lemon show. She actually explained the record and addressed what she meant by that statement. And it's good to hear the other side so we can balance the conversation.
That comment that he made about me, Sheila Jackson Lee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Michelle Obama, that they saw we checked off black and female and let us in because that is the way that they were going to do their quota, is illogical for a few reasons. Reason number one, there are about 1,200 slots, let's say, in the Ivy League sort of freshman classes, and probably like 10,000 people applying. A lot of those people are black. How did they actually get down to the ones that they picked? Did they pick us at random? They had to have at least vetted us a little more than that. Number two, to even be willing and have the balls to apply to Harvard, you probably have to have a certain GPA. Mine happened to be 4.2 on a 4.0 scale. So that meant that I had the balls to apply in the first place because I was super performing. We also had to submit our SAT scores. I scored in the 96th percentile on the SATs, meaning that I did better on the SATs than 96% of the people who took the SATs the same year, including the white people. And let's say I got into Harvard just because I was black. Okay, let's go ahead and give them that. How did I get into Yale? How did I get into Brown? How did I get into University of Denver? How did I get into Vassar? And the last thing I'll say about this, for all of y'all people on Fox that are going to clip this because y'all mad about affirmative action, because yes, I embrace affirmative action because I belonged at Harvard and I was smarter than all the legacies I went to school with, who only were there because they were rich and their parents had a name on one of the buildings and they didn't go to class and I did. So I'm just going to let y'all know that we see affirmative action as these schools searching for people they wouldn't have ordinarily found without deliberately looking for us. They would have just let the same mediocre white men from rich families in.
Huge difference, right? Do you see when you understand the perspective of the other side comparing to the way that Charlie Kirk was thinking? Huge difference. Now we've been informed in ways we didn't think about it before. It's not as black and white as Charlie Kirk might have been thinking. This is important to the conversation now. But now let's move to Thomas Sowell. Okay, Thomas Sowell is a big name. Thomas Sowell is an economist, PhD. He also was an instructor at Cornell and UCLA. He's a big deal, all right? That man is a thinker, okay? Because I've listened to some of his lectures and I'm like, yeah, he's good. Now, he's talking about affirmative action. He's going to balance the conversation a little bit more for us. Listen to the way he understands it.
Me that the principal benefit of a Harvard degree was never again having to be impressed by anybody who had a Harvard degree. Is that right?
Absolutely.
All right. So these are figures that were published in the Harvard Crimson, the student newspaper. In the Harvard class of 2019, these are the kids who will be graduating next June. The average SAT score for black students was 2149. By the way, these are all good scores, but for black students, 2149, white students, 2218, Asian students, 2300. Well, now that must be reasonable because it's taking place at Harvard, the seat of reason.
Well, that wasn't quite how I described it when I was there.
Affirmative action. Is that we ought not to be doing this?
You know, there are various laws and policies that benefit one group at the expense of another. But I think affirmative action has the distinction of being one that it harms everybody, though in different ways. And so there's a lot of evidence that there are black kids who have all the qualifications to be successes in college, who nevertheless are failures because they are systematically mismatched with institutions whose standards they don't meet, even though they may meet the standards of 80 or 90% of the colleges in America. I remember first aware of this when I was teaching at Cornell, and I found that half the black students at Cornell were on some kind of academic probation. And so I went over to the administration building and looked up the SATs of these students. The average black student at Cornell at that time scored at the 75th percentile.
Which is pretty darn good.
Yes. And so that means that in most colleges in this country, they would have no trouble, and many of them would be on the dean's list. But at Cornell, the average liberal arts student at that time was in the 99th percentile. And when you're teaching the students like that, you teach at a pace that most people of any race cannot keep up with. And it was always complained that I was assigning all kinds of reading. But heck, I'm teaching kids who are in the top 1%. They can keep up with the reading that I'm assigning.
So Cornell was taking very talented black kids and spending 4 years teaching them to feel inadequate.
Yes, and succeeding at that.
That is huge. That is huge. I hope things are making sense now. Turning down the temperature a little bit, asking some solid questions, learning how to think critically. The Trump administration came and said, we're getting rid of affirmative action, DEI. We don't want any of that because of how much is being abused. So keep in mind, there's gender, there's disabilities. It's not just race, right? So there is abuse. But at the same time, it is also opening doors for opportunities for certain individuals who will have never been given that chance. So both is true. That's the problem with this. Both is true. But keep in mind, Charlie Kirk had a different understanding than the rest of the story. So therefore, his words and his thoughts had a lot to say with that. And don't forget the political side of the discussion as well. Okay? So now, look.
The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs.
Okay. Is it clear? Is it making sense? Do you see the different way that it is being interpreted and how it is being looked depending on political parties and each one of the person's view, timing, understanding, definition, interpretation? That's why I read that statement earlier. Jesus answered the question, what is written in the law? How readest thou? That matters here because that has a lot to do with the way we are talking about the subject matter now. This is Sowell TV. Now, they're talking about affirmative action here. This is not even Republican or Democrat. These guys, they do a different work, okay? Sowell is very independent in his thinking and I actually appreciate the way he addresses a number of things. Not everything, but a number of things. Listen.
Billion-dollar industry.
Every big company.
They feel like they have to. They have to say something. They have to signal to the world that they're doing something.
Is it effective?
No. In fact, it seems to be doing worse. It seems to be making people less likely to interact with people who are unlike them, because it's like a minefield now.
Less likely to interact?
After a training where you hear things about microaggressions, if you ask somebody what they do for a living, somehow that's racist, right? If you learn that, then why would you take a chance?
I better not talk to Eric because I might say something wrong.
Precisely. So now inclusion means I'm going to silence myself and not talk to the black people.
All white people are racist.
Some trainings are just divisive and dumb.
I believe that white people are born into not being human.
This is extreme, I take it.
It is extreme.
You see those videos, and I want to remind you, people like Charlie Kirk is watching this, right? And they're formulating thoughts, they're having ideas, they're having their position, and they're feeling certain type of way. All that has a lot to do with the interpretation. He has a lot to do with his definition of words, okay? So keep that in mind as well.
People are born into not being human.
This is extreme, I take it.
It is extreme, but it's becoming more of the norm.
These slides were shown at a Coca-Cola diversity training.
The thesis of this training was try to be less white. They're talking about arrogance and things like that. That is by no means a white thing. The point is to demonize the other side as much as possible.
And absurdly, diversity trainings don't even do what they're supposed to do. This Harvard professor analyzed studies of them.
Sadly enough, I did not find one single study which has found that diversity training in fact leads to more diversity.
In fact, the Harvard Business Review reports 5 years after diversity training, the share of black women managers actually decreased.
It's not about data, it's about a power grab.
A power grab that starts in schools.
Melt the steel bars of racism and white language supremacy.
This expert tells teachers it's racist to teach traditional English.
If you use a single standard to grade your students' languaging, you engage in racism. You actively promote white language supremacy, which is the handmaiden to white bias in the world.
Smith was in the audience.
I heard that, thought it was a bit misguided.
So Smith wrote a long and thoughtful response saying it's a disservice to minority kids not to teach standard English. For that, he was attacked.
We are professors in communication. I thought we could communicate. I was so wrong.
Instead of a discussion, people called you racist. Do you enjoy using Western modes of argument to invalidate people of color? Check your privilege.
What they saw in me was a bigger threat than anything they've seen before. A black person saying,
Okay. All right. We're still examining facts here. All right. We just about done. We're just about done. Now, there goes another comment that really made some people upset. But again, keep in mind now, we've established school of thoughts, politics, interpretation, views, okay, and conviction. All of that is crucial. And now listen to this video.
When I get on an airplane, you know, I want my pilot to be like, "Hi, this is Chad." Maybe like a little bit of a southern accent.
Chad Buckworth here.
You know,
No, Chad. This is my 31,000th hour. I'm kind of bored, honestly.
Yeah, I could do this in my sleep.
But exactly. I want just like cookie cutter, like. Pilot. Yeah, this is so easy to me. I don't want LaQuisha James.
They have
who
that
comes
like
up,
pilot voice,
and she's just like, "Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Pray for me."
And the truth is it's just this is a creation that the left wanted, because
and they think you can't say anything about it because they'll call you a racist. And this is where we really have to take the gloves off and say your name calling will not get in the way of people's safety at 35,000
they're like,
feet.
it's offensive to.
Okay. All right. And we can get into the pilot discussion. There's some videos out there that really highlights this idea of hiring people because of their skin color. That's actually a fact. Because of their gender. That's a fact. Now, are they qualified? I don't care what they are, right? Is the question, are they qualified? Do they know what they're doing? Because people's lives are in their hands. That's the main question. This is the root of the thought behind the remarks that Charlie Kirk just made, right? Beside all the joke, but this is the point that he's driving. So he takes an issue with affirmative action, and he believes that it is not a positive way to address matters. Here is this young lady. She was a liberal. She understood exactly what I'm telling you. She was able to examine the facts, and she says, wow, I had to learn how to think critically and carefully about the subject matter before you start using the R words, right? Think.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to think, boy, I hope he's qualified. Let's talk about it. I have seen this clip over and over. It's been sent to me more times than I can count. And I can admit that in my old liberal mindset, hearing that with no context would have enraged me. And I wouldn't have been willing to listen to the context because I would have decided that this man was racist. And that's what a lot of you have decided. And I worry that in our community, we jump directly to defensiveness and we have given up on critical thinking. And that has stopped us from being able to be reflective, like self-reflective when it comes to our community and what is true. So let's talk about what's true. Charlie Kirk was saying that if only 2% of pilots in our country are black, and these different airlines have put in place DEI policies to increase purposefully and like specifically increase the number of black pilots that are working for our airlines, and they are adjusting the merit and the qualifications in order to do so and in order to hit those numbers, then it's safe to say that many might not hit the standards that used to be required. And did he say it in a way that was a little inflammatory and that ruffled feathers and that made people cock their head and say, what are you saying about the black community? And I think many of us heard black pilots aren't qualified. And that's not what he said. So did he say it in a way that could be misconstrued as racist? Yes. Does it change the fact that he was attacking a policy and not a people? No. And it's okay for people to speak truth to our community. And I fear that we've become so sensitive and honestly so entitled that if a white man speaks to us or about us in any way, we call them a racist unless they say anything but I'm sorry. And until we're willing to listen to other voices and be honest with ourselves about ourselves and stop being so sensitive and immediately screaming racism, we're not going to grow as a community.
I actually agree with her 100%. All right. A lot of our people are emotional. They're not critical. We are emotional, reactionary, and we get it. There are reasons for that. Okay. We have an entire history in this country of racism. Okay. There are wounds and sores that we're talking about. We get it. But you cannot be emotional, especially when you're a Christian. You must be critical and biblical in your thinking. All right. So if our pastors did what I'm doing here, am I doing a good job? Am I actually helping you to see things differently? Let me know in the chat, because I know this video is longer than usual, but I felt the need to do this because the people who are just using the R words, they're not doing this. They're not examining the entire story. They're not getting into the definition. They're not getting into the school of thoughts. They're not looking at the politics. They're not talking about critical race theory. They're not talking about affirmative action, DEI hire from the different angles. Are they showing those videos with you? Are they sharing these videos with you? Are they telling you the rest of the story? Let me know if what I'm doing is making sense to you, okay? I need to hear that from you guys. Now, this is another video from Charlie Kirk. Again, this girl is asking a question. Listen carefully to the way she asks that question, okay? And I want you to hear the answer that he gives. All right, listen.
Hi. Ew, sorry. Hi, my name is Miracle. And, hold on. Everyone in line, trust. I did not mean to cut you guys.
You say your name is Miracle?
Yes.
That's a beautiful name.
Thank you. I wanted to ask what you thought of affirmative action, because I am someone, I'm a Pacific Islander. I fall under that, tree. And I am a senior in high school, and I plan on attending college. Many of my teachers have told me, especially my counselors, like I've been nervous about getting into colleges. Many have told me, you're underrepresented. You're a person of color, like you're guaranteed a spot in the college of your dreams. And I've been told that by many of my teachers. And I wanted to ask you what you thought about it, because I refuse to believe that I'm going to be accepted into the college of my dreams due to the color of my skin or the underrepresentation of my people, and more on I have great grades, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, and I plan on...
Affirmative action always puts one person above another based on characteristics that I don't think are important. And you have just beautifully isolated what is so deeply morally wrong about affirmative action, which is you've studied really hard, I imagine, right? You've applied yourself, yes. And your teachers are looking at you as a skin color. They're not looking at you as someone with good character, good test grades, someone that shows up and does all the extra homework. They're obsessed with your skin color. And we have a word for that. It's called being a racist and a bigot. I hate to cut to that too fast, but if there was ever a time to use that term, it's that. And let me tell you the tragedy that you're going to have to navigate. Let's pretend your dream school is Stanford. Okay, let's just pretend. It's got problems, but it's got some good departments. Okay, and you go to Stanford. Do you know the problem is? People are going to think you got there just because of your skin color. It creates more racism. They're not going to assume that you had good grades, that you could have gotten in on your own merits, which, based on how articulate you asked the question, you probably could. And that all of a sudden you're going to have this hanging over your head of people that might say, is she there because of affirmative action? Is she there because of these policies? We want merit. We want a society based on how hard somebody works, how hard they apply themselves, the content of their character, not just what they look like. And so I'm glad to see the Supreme Court that came in and say that parts of affirmative action are unconstitutional, and I think we need more of it. And I think that you're a great example of that because you want to be judged by your work, not just the underrepresentation of your people. God bless you. Miracle, thank you.
I hope you're beginning to see the difference in the language when you examine the facts, right? We're not running with some TikTok video here, a bunch of little clips here and there, just emotional appeal. We're not doing that. Are we doing that? No. We are examining the facts. We are examining the claims, and we're trying to do this in a fair and balanced way, okay? There's no emotion here. It's just facts. Now, when you listen to everything that is said here in this video, how could somebody watch that video and come to the conclusion that Charlie Kirk is racist? The only reason that could happen is only if they're thinking emotionally. They're being reactionary, right? But if you're thinking critically, that's not the case at all. I hope I'm making sense. So to answer some of your questions, he was speaking about 4 black women, not all black women. 4 black women. He wasn't talking about all black women having no brain, don't know how to think. That's actually not the case, okay? One of his best friends was Candace Owens. He was also friends with Officer Tatum. He was running a $800-something million business with 30% of them were blacks, from what I've heard. So it's just not exactly the case. It's not as black and white as we might think. Okay, so the second thing is he was referring to those 4 black women, Joy Reid, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Jasmine Crockett, and there was another one, Michelle Obama, and we can also add Kamala Harris. Okay, so this is all a different way to look at the matter. And when you listen to the claims of what he believed, right, comparing to what the other side believed, 2 different story. When you listen to some of the remarks from the other side and how he's interpreting it, it makes sense why he said the thing that he said. Why did he believe these thoughts? Because of the political views and definitions of words, interpretation. These are things we have to consider before we start saying he's we can't listen, man. That's called critical thinking. Now, going back to what Jesus says, and look how Jesus addressed the matter. So the question was asked to Jesus, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, what is written in the law, how readest thou? Now, here is what's going on here. This is critical thinking at its finest. So think how about Jesus' ways of dealing with the challenge and misconception and question to tempt him, misrepresent, manipulation, and so on. So he's addressing it. Jesus doesn't give an answer to the lawyer. Instead, he asks, what is written in the law? What does the evidence, the text of the law actually says? Number 2, how readest thou? How do you interpret the matter? That's also crucial. Let's keep going. Critical thinking begins with careful questioning, not rushing to conclusion. A lot of our people are doing this. They're rushing into conclusion. They're not asking questions. Okay, let's keep going. The second thing that Jesus did, and this is also crucial, separating observation from interpretation. What is written is the key question here. The objective facts, the text. How readest thou? The subjective interpretation, your understanding. Number one, separate the text from the person understanding before you jump into the R words, because that matters. How readest thou? What is written in the law? Address the text. Number two, how readest thou? What is your interpretation of that? That is also matter. This distinction is central to critical thinking, recognizing the difference between raw data and the lens through which we view it. Remember, everybody is biased. We all have our lenses on. So did Charlie Kirk. So do you. So do I. But you have to be fair with the way you approach a particular text and also understand your own biases behind your interpretation and your worldview, even your biblical worldview. And we do not have all the same worldview and conviction. All of that matters. Okay. Now let's go to number 3. We're going to go through this fairly quickly now because I noticed the time. Now, next is this. Encouraging self-examination. Jesus forced the lawyer to examine his own reasoning process. Critical thinking isn't just about critiquing others. It's about being aware of your assumptions, biases, and logic. You gotta have them. So when you hear certain thoughts, certain videos, certain words being said, what about your biases, your perceptions? All of that matters. And you have to be able to examine them because a lot of times, these are the reasons why you're responding certain way. Now, let's keep going. Accountability to sources, and this is crucial. By pointing back to the law, the scriptures, Jesus anchors reasoning in an authoritative, reliable source. This is key. Critical thinking similarly asks, what is my reference point? What source am I appealing to? And can it stand scrutiny? This is critical thinking. All of that has to be applied within the context of what you are hearing before you jump into conclusion. When the people who are sharing those videos and making those claims, do they take time to do any of this? Do they take time to actually look at the evidence and examine the nature of their reference point? Do they do that? Friends, they don't. They don't. All right, let's keep going. So there is the Socratic method style, which is also crucial. Jesus used a question to teach, not a lecture. This method is at the heart of critical thinking, learning to reason through dialogue, probing, and reflection rather than passive receiving information. And that's the problem. We see a video, and most people had no idea who Charlie Kirk was. I was talking to someone, they're like, I never knew who Charlie Kirk was. I have never met this man, but I saw a few videos that people are talking about, and they just like, and then you believe everything they said in that video? They said, how long was that video? It's about, like a 40 seconds video. On TikTok? Yeah. So they put like 5-6 claims together, and that was the video. He said, yeah. Well, you don't even know who the man was? No. I'm like, come on, people. You got to ask the proper questions and examine your sources and also be aware of your biases, your own experience. All of that matter, your thinking processes. All of that can help us to critically think. You see this model that I just shared with you today, friends. Listen, you can take this to the church. You can take this about any different subjects that is presented to you. I know this video is longer than normal. Thank you for bearing with me, but I wanted to make this video to carefully give you an examination of things so that we do not get emotionally manipulated in this time. We are living in troublous time, a time where the enemy is seeking to deceive and confuse and bring about confusion in the body of Christ. and at the same time bring about serious division among his fellow brethren, getting the blacks to hate the whites to hate the blacks, and fighting with each other and everything. We have the political views, biblical conviction, certain worldviews that we have. Listen, friends, we need to think critically. We need to think biblically. We need to think like Jesus. We need to do that. And we need to simply believe what Jesus says when he says to his disciples, we need to love one another. So before we call, Doug Batchelor this or that, because he doesn't have the same thinking processes that you do, pause and pray. Before you start name calling, writing long articles and saying all kind of nasty, mean words, think a little bit. Before you call Charlie Kirk racist, think a little bit about what you're saying. Take this and apply it to every other video, friends. Look at the full evidence. Take these processes, take these steps that I just shared with you, apply them to every other videos, and you will come to a different understanding. Before you start saying sexist, xenophobic, racist, nationalist, listen, just think biblically, think critically, and also make room for grace. Because some people may be at a place where you're not at that moment. Because somebody may be at a place right now that is farther from your conviction. They may not see things the way that you do. That doesn't make them bad people automatically. The name calling doesn't fix it. We need to examine the facts, or be aware of our own biases, check our resources, and also give room for grace. Because people are going to make mistakes. People are going to say things we don't agree with. This is why grace and mercy is very crucial in this conversation as well. We don't need any vengeance, retaliations, and name calling. Those do not get the job done. If you are thinking critically, biblically, you can save yourself from making shipwreck of faith, unnecessary divisions, and unthoughtful, ungodly comments will not come out of your mouth if you are thinking carefully. Lord, I'm praying that the Lord will teach me how to do this more. I examined this word today. I spent some time looking things up, and I've learned a lot myself. And I hope what I shared with you today was a blessing to you as well. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Let's love each other. Okay, let's be patient with one another. And if there's any questions you need to ask each other, let's put the emotions aside and let's put our thinking caps on. May the Lord help us to be better Christians in our hearts and to one another.